Shabbat Shalom. Perhaps you are familiar with the following story. I just learned about it this week. On April 6, 1962, something highly unusual happened during the New York Philharmonic's concert at Carnegie Hall. After the intermission, just before starting the second half with Brahms' first piano concerto, featuring pianist Glenn Gould, the conductor, Leonard Bernstein, stepped onto the podium and said a few words to prepare the audience for what would come next. Here are his words. A curious situation has arisen which merits, I think, a word or two. You are about to hear a rather, shall we say, unorthodox performance of the Brahms D minor concerto, a performance distinctly different from any I've ever heard or even dreamt of for that matter. I cannot say I am in total agreement with Mr. Gould's conception, and this raises an interesting question. What am I doing conducting it? I'm conducting it because Mr. Gould is so valid and serious an artist that I must take seriously anything he conceives in good faith, and his conception is interesting enough so that I feel you should hear it too. As I was listening to this recording of Bernstein's remarks, I wondered to myself if he would have agreed to conduct alongside Gould, or if Gould would have been willing to be conducted by Bernstein had the concert been taking place today. Where in our lives do we see this sort of tolerance for divergent perspective? A tolerance that not only permits the other's existence alongside it, but all the more so, a tolerance in which the holders of the divergent perspectives might actually collaborate with one another. And if we happened to actually witness such a thing, how might our society react to that? Would the collaboration be praised? Or more likely panned, with its operatives canceled or censured for their complicity with one another? This week's Torah portion, Korach, features one of the most well-known episodes of interpersonal conflict in the entire Torah. In this high-drama portion, Moses' first cousin, Korach, accuses Moses of elitism and challenges his authority. Korach bases his complaint on an established communal norm and truth, that all of God's community is holy. And then he goes on to accuse Moses and Aaron of elevating themselves above everyone else. What's then revealed, however, is the actual spirit of Korach's complaint. His issue is not actually about the treatment of all the people. His issue is that he is not the one in charge. Put in other terms, Korach is not striving for the betterment of the ancient Israelite community. Korach is striving for self-elevation. And Moses recognizes this. But instead of calling Korach out, he meets Korach where his complaint is focused and suggests a method for resolution, a spirituality duel of sorts, charging Korach and his band to return the next morning so each party can present offerings to God. If Korach's question is focused around who the leaders should be, and the accusation against Moses and Aaron is that they have appointed themselves, no problem. Let's let God choose who God wants to be the leaders, the winners. Ultimately, as you might imagine, Korach doesn't win. His offerings are rejected, and God renders a final sweeping judgment against all of the rebels. The ground actually opens up and swallows them all. Read a different way, they are canceled by God. And while it would seem that the story was over, Jewish tradition goes on to use this episode as a guide for all people in how to approach disagreement and differences of opinion and perspective. In the 2,000-year-old Mishnah's Pirkei Avot, we learn that in life there are two different types of conflicts or divisions. One for the sake of heaven, and one that is not for the sake of heaven. According to the text, any division, which is sometimes understood to be disagreement, and other times refers to a group within a larger society, which is for the sake of heaven, the Mishnah teaches, well, this type of disagreement ultimately endures. Whereas any division that is not for the sake of heaven, well, it won't endure. So what's a division for the sake of heaven? The Mishnah says this is the division of Hillel and Shammai, two of the most famous rabbinic paradigms for how it is to demonstrate what civil discourse can actually mean. What is an example of one that is not for the sake of heaven? Well, this is the division of Korach and his band. So how does one know what exactly for the sake of heaven means? The commentators go on to generally agree that the purpose of an effort for the sake of heaven is solely to arrive at the truth, whereas an effort not for the sake of heaven is designed to achieve power and victory. Thus, the end met by Korach and his band, whose aim and end goal was solely lust for honor and power. I wonder how our society might benefit if each person, when finding themselves in a divisive situation, was to practice discernment about how they were reacting to and engaging with the opposition view or party. What if before saying a word, or posting a meme, or clicking an angry emoji or a thumbs up, each person were to ask themselves, am I engaging in this way, in a way that is for the sake of heaven, or not? And if not, how might I change my approach to bring everyone to a higher place in the process? One simple exercise has the potential to make a profound difference, and it's simply asking oneself the following 4 questions about what they want to say or do. 1, is my motivation rooted in wanting to be right or more powerful than the person with whom I disagree? And if the answer is yes, to ask oneself why that matters to them. 2, to ask oneself if what they are about to say or do is necessary. 3, to ask oneself if what they are about to say or do is kind. And if you're still there, 4, to ask oneself if what they are about to say or do is true. I want to be clear. The issue is not about eliminating division or disagreement. There's actually no way to access ultimate truth without a diversity of views. Rav Kook teaches it's precisely for the multiplicity of opinions which derive from the variegated souls and backgrounds which enriches wisdom and brings about its enlargement. In the end, all matters will be properly understood, and it will be recognized that it was impossible for the structure of peace to be built without those trends which appeared to be in conflict. Just listen to that. It will be recognized that it was impossible for the structure of peace to be built without those trends which appeared to be in conflict. But if our division and disagreement rests solely in a place not of truth-seeking, but of self-interest and self-aggrandizement, then literally and figuratively, there is no place else to go. There is no higher realm. We are simply wasting time. We are, as the Mishnah teaches, confirming our own meaninglessness. I don't know if Leonard Bernstein knew the Korach story or was familiar with its commentaries, but the concluding words of his speech at Carnegie Hall make me think he was channeling something of them that spring night. Here's how he concludes. The age-old question still remains. In a concerto, who is the boss? The soloist or the conductor? The answer is, of course, sometimes one and sometimes the other, depending on the people involved. But almost always, the two manage to get together by persuasion or charm or even threats to achieve a unified performance. I have only once before in my life had to submit to a soloist's wholly new and incompatible concept, and that was the last time I accompanied Mr. Gould. But this time, the discrepancies between our views are so great that I feel I must make this small disclaimer. Then why, to repeat the question, am I conducting it? Why do I not make a minor scandal, get a substitute soloist, or let an assistant conduct? Listen to his response here. Because I am fascinated, glad to have the chance for a new look at this much-played work. Because what's more, there are moments in Mr. Gould's performance that emerge with astonishing freshness and conviction. Thirdly, because we can all learn something from this extraordinary artist who is a thinking performer. And finally, because there is in music what is called the sportive element, that factor of curiosity, adventure, experiment. And I can assure you that this has been an adventure this week collaborating with Mr. Gould on this Brahms concerto. And it's in this spirit of adventure that we now present it to you. To value exposure to a new or different way of seeing the familiar, to be open to and elevate the possibility of freshness and conviction in a viewpoint not our own, to believe that there is something to be learned from every person and experience, to be governed by a spirit of curiosity, adventure, and experimentation that is only possible through collaboration. That sounds pretty heavenly to me. I think our Jewish invitation is to try to bring that down to earth and to do that as fast as we can. Shabbat Shalom.